The brass door handle left a smudge of dirt from Silas Reeves's calloused fingers, probably the first time street grime had touched anything in the Whitmore Gallery's pristine interior. He pushed through anyway, carrying 3 months of work wrapped in a torn bedsheet because proper canvas bags cost money he didn't have. "We're closed." Vanessa Whitmore didn't look up from her mahogany desk, her voice carrying the particular dismissal reserved for people she'd already decided weren't worth her time. She wore a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than Silas had earned in the past 6 months of day labor jobs. Her manicured nails, French tips, recently done, clicked against her keyboard with rhythmic precision. "I have a painting," Silas said, his voice rough from sleeping outdoors in Boston's October cold. "I'd like you to consider it for your collection." Vanessa finally looked up. Her expression shifted in the span of 2 seconds, from mild annoyance to barely concealed disgust. She took in Silas's appearance with the kind of assessment wealthy people performed unconsciously: worn canvas jacket with holes in both elbows, jeans stained with paint and street grime, boots held together with duct tape and prayer, graying hair that hadn't seen a professional cut in 2 years, 3-day beard growth, fingernails permanently darkened with acrylic paint that no amount of scrubbing could remove. Comment where you're watching from if you've ever been judged by your appearance. "This is a curated fine art gallery," Vanessa said, standing from her desk with the air of someone removing an unpleasant obstacle from her space. "Not a charity donation center. We represent established artists. People with credentials, exhibitions, gallery representation, recognition in the contemporary art community. Not," she gestured vaguely at him, her diamond bracelet catching gallery lighting. "Whatever you are." "I was established once," Silas said quietly, his hands tightening on the wrapped canvas. "I studied at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. I've had exhibitions. My work has sold at. I don't care where you claim you studied." Vanessa crossed her arms, positioning herself between Silas and the deeper gallery spaces where actual art hung on actual walls under actual spotlights. "Every homeless person who wanders in here has a story about how they used to be something. Used to be an artist, used to be successful, used to matter. The Whitmore Gallery has a reputation to maintain. We can't display work from people wandering in off the street. It would devalue our entire collection." Silas unwrapped his canvas anyway. The bedsheet fell away to reveal 36 inches by 48 inches of truth rendered in oil paint. Boston Common at dawn, light breaking through bare October trees in shades of gold and amber that shouldn't exist in nature but did in that perfect 15 minutes before the city fully woke. In the foreground, 3 homeless individuals slept on park benches, but they weren't rendered as anonymous masses or sociological problems. Each face told a complete story. An older black woman with a face etched by 60 years of life, wrapped in blankets that had once been expensive but were now just survival. A young white man, maybe 30, whose features still carried traces of who he'd been before circumstances destroyed him. A Latino veteran with a service dog, both asleep, both dreaming, both worthy of dignity the world refused to grant them. The technical skill was undeniable, layering techniques that took years to master, color theory that belonged in textbooks, perspective that pulled the eye through the composition with mathematical precision. But more than technique, the painting carried emotional truth. The kind of truth that came from lived experience rather than observation from safety. Vanessa glanced at it for exactly 3 seconds. Derivative. Sentimental. Technically adequate but lacking originality or commercial appeal. The subject matter is depressing. Nobody wants homeless people hanging in their living rooms. Take it to a street fair. Maybe tourists will buy it for $20 to feel socially conscious. "Please," Silas started, but Vanessa cut him off. "I'm being kind by being honest with you. Other galleries would waste your time pretending to consider your work. I'm telling you directly, this isn't gallery quality. It's amateur work with delusions of profundity. Homeless subjects painted by homeless artists, there's no market for that kind of poverty tourism." Her finger moved toward the intercom button on her desk. "Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily." I don't want to call them, but I will if necessary. Silas felt the familiar weight of invisibility settling over him like a physical thing. 10 years of this. 10 years of being dismissed, ignored, erased. Of creating masterpieces that nobody with power or money would ever see because homelessness had made him professionally extinct. Art wasn't supposed to work like this, talent was supposed to matter more than circumstances. But the art world had rules, and the first rule was that poverty disqualified you from consideration before anyone even looked at your work. He began wrapping his canvas back in the torn bedsheet, hands shaking slightly. Not from cold this time. From rage and grief and the exhausting futility of trying to be seen when society had decided you were invisible. The doorbells chimed. A woman in an elegant black wool coat entered, her presence immediately commanding attention in a way that had nothing to do with volume or aggression and everything to do with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her opinion mattered. She was around 50, Asian features, silver streaking through black hair pulled into a neat chignon, carrying herself with the particular grace of old money combined with genuine taste. Ms. Chen. Vanessa's entire demeanor transformed in an instant, dismissive gallery owner becoming obsequious servant. I wasn't expecting you until 3. Please, let me show you the Rothstein pieces that just arrived. But Isabella Chen wasn't looking at Vanessa. Her eyes had locked onto Silas's painting, still half-wrapped on the floor where he knelt trying to cover it back up. She walked directly past Vanessa without acknowledgement, her expensive Italian leather shoes stopping inches from Silas's worn boots. She stared at the canvas for 10 seconds. 20. 30. The gallery fell silent except for the ambient hum of climate control keeping the temperature at exactly 68 degrees to preserve the valuable works hanging on pristine white walls. May I? Isabella asked quietly, gesturing to the painting. Silas nodded, too surprised to speak. Isabella knelt, an elegant 50-year-old woman in a coat that probably cost $5,000, kneeling on a gallery floor to examine a homeless man's painting. She studied the brushwork up close, the layering techniques, the way light had been built through multiple transparent glazes, the anatomical precision of the figures, the composition's mathematical harmony. Comment where you're watching from if you believe real talent can't be hidden. The technique, Isabella said softly, almost to herself. The layering, the light treatment, the way color is built through successive transparent applications rather than mixed on palette, I've only seen one artist work like this. Silas Reeves. But he disappeared from the art world 10 years ago. Most people assume he's dead. Silas met her eyes. Recognition hitting like electricity. She knew his work. Knew his name. Remembered when he'd mattered. You're him, Isabella breathed. You're Silas Reeves. Vanessa's face went pale. The homeless vagrant she'd just threatened to have security remove wasn't some delusional street artist. He was Silas Reeves, an artist whose earlier work had sold for 6 figures, whose name still appeared in contemporary art textbooks, whose disappearance had become an art world legend. And she'd just called his masterpiece derivative tourist trash worth $20. In front of Isabella Chen. One of the most powerful art collectors in the world. Isabella stood slowly, turning to face Vanessa with an expression colder than Boston winter. I'd like to purchase this painting. And I'd like to see everything else Mr. Reeves has created. Immediately. She looked at Silas. Do you have more work? 17 more paintings, Silas said quietly. In a storage unit. My driver is outside. We're leaving now. Isabella pulled out her phone without looking at Vanessa. And Ms. Whitmore, this is the last time I'll set foot in your gallery. You just failed the most basic test of what it means to recognize art. You judged a masterpiece by the clothes of the man holding it. They walked toward the door together, the homeless artist and the billionaire collector. Behind them, Vanessa stood frozen, watching her career credibility shatter like glass. Wait, Vanessa called desperately. Ms. Chen, please, I was simply being cautious. If I'd known who he was. Isabella paused at the door, looked back with contempt. That's exactly the problem. You should have known. The work should have told you. Instead, you saw poverty and decided talent was impossible. She opened the door. Goodbye, Ms. Whitmore. The bells chimed as they left. And in that moment, Vanessa Whitmore realized she just made the worst professional mistake of her life, dismissing genius because it came wrapped in homelessness instead of privilege. What she didn't know yet was that the mistake was even bigger than she imagined. Because Silas Reeves wasn't just a homeless artist Isabella Chen had discovered. He was the artist Vanessa had destroyed 10 years ago. And now he was back. Isabella's black Mercedes pulled away from the Whitmore Gallery, leaving Vanessa standing on the sidewalk staring after them like she just watched her professional reputation drive away. Inside the car, Silas sat in leather seats that probably cost more than he'd spent on food in the past year, trying to process what had just happened. The storage unit is in Dorchester, Silas said, giving the driver the address. It's not a nice neighborhood. I don't care about the neighborhood, Isabella replied, already typing on her phone. I care about what's inside that unit. 17 paintings you said? 17. All created in the past 5 years. Before that, Silas stopped himself. The story of his destruction could wait. Right now, he needed to focus on not waking up from whatever dream this was. The storage facility looked exactly like what it was, a cinderblock rectangle where poor people paid monthly fees to keep possessions they had nowhere else to put. Silas led Isabella down fluorescent-lit corridors that smelled like mildew and desperation, past units containing furniture from evictions, boxes from divorces, lives compressed into 10 by 10 concrete spaces. Unit 247. Silas's hands shook as he worked the padlock combination. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. 17 canvases leaned against walls, wrapped in plastic sheeting and cardboard. Silas began unwrapping them, setting them up where Isabella could see them despite the terrible lighting. She studied each piece in complete silence. Silas watched her face, trying to read her reaction and finding nothing. Isabella Chen hadn't become one of the world's most successful collectors by revealing her thoughts before she was ready. Shelter interior, winter of 2023, Silas said, pointing to a painting showing rows of cots where 40 men slept. Soup kitchen line, December. Morning commute from the perspective of someone sleeping on a subway grate. The tent city under the Mass Avenue Bridge. Street corner at 3 a.m. Sunrise from the Common. Veterans Memorial on a day nobody came. Each painting demonstrated the same technical mastery as the first, museum-quality skill applied to subjects the art world preferred to ignore. But more than that, they carried authenticity. These weren't poverty observed from safety. This was poverty lived, painted by someone who'd spent years invisible. Isabella spent 20 minutes in that storage unit, studying paintings that had been hidden from the world while galleries sold mediocre work for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hit subscribe if you believe this needs to be seen. Finally, she turned to Silas. I want to buy all 18 paintings. Including the one still at the gallery, though I'll be retrieving that personally since I don't trust Vanessa Whitmore to handle it properly. What would you pay? Silas asked, barely trusting his voice. $50,000 for the Boston Common piece. The collection as a whole, Isabella calculated in her head. I'm prepared to offer $950,000 total. The number hit Silas like a physical blow. $950,000. Nearly $1 million. More money than he'd seen in a decade. Enough to change everything. That's not market manipulation or charity pricing, Isabella continued. That's fair value for museum-quality contemporary work from an artist with established provenance and critical recognition. The fact that you created these while homeless doesn't diminish their worth, it increases it. This is important documentation of an American crisis rendered by someone who lived it. She pulled out her phone. I'm going to arrange something bigger than a simple purchase. I want to mount a major exhibition. Boston Museum of Contemporary Art. I sit on their board, they'll give us the main gallery space. We'll call it, Silas Reeves, 10 Years of Invisibility. Show the art world what they missed while they were busy celebrating safe, comfortable mediocrity. An exhibition, Silas repeated, the concept feeling impossible. A retrospective. Your triumphant return. Critics, collectors, galleries, media, everyone who matters will see this work and recognize what it is. Museum quality. Career-defining. Important. Isabella met his eyes. This will restore your reputation completely. Prove you never stopped being a significant artist. You just became invisible to people who only see what they expect to see. There's something you need to know first, Silas said. The words came hard, scraping against 10 years of shame and rage. About why I disappeared. About who destroyed me. Tell me. Vanessa Whitmore. The woman who just dismissed my work as tourist trash. 10 years ago, she was my dealer. My business manager. She represented me exclusively for 5 years. Silas's voice went flat. When my wife got cancer, I needed money fast for treatment. Vanessa offered to sell my existing inventory, 30 paintings worth about $2 million. She sold them. Paid me $400,000. Kept the rest. Isabella's expression hardened. She stole $1.6 million while your wife was dying. And when I confronted her after my wife died, she destroyed my reputation. Spread rumors I was mentally unstable. Got articles published calling me unreliable, paranoid, dangerous. Within months, no gallery would touch me. No collector would return my calls. She erased me professionally. Then used my stolen money to open her gallery. The storage unit fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. You want justice, not just money, Isabella said. It wasn't a question. I want the art world to know who she is. What she's done. I want her career destroyed the way she destroyed mine. Silas looked at the paintings surrounding them. 10 years of work created in margins while Vanessa built success on theft. But I'm a homeless man making accusations against an established gallery owner. Nobody will believe me. Isabella smiled, cold and sharp and absolutely certain. They'll believe me. And I have an idea for how to prove everything while making Vanessa destroy herself in the process. Hit subscribe, justice is coming. She pulled out her phone, started making calls. But first, we need to get you off the street. Can't have my newest acquisition sleeping in shelters while I'm arranging his comeback exhibition. I can't afford. You just sold me paintings for $950,000. I'm advancing you $50,000 immediately. Rent an apartment. Buy proper clothes. Get a studio. Start living like the successful artist you're about to be again. Isabella finished dialing. And while you're doing that, I'm going to set a trap for Vanessa Whitmore that she'll walk into willingly because greed makes people stupid. What kind of trap? The kind where she thinks she's exploiting another vulnerable artist for profit. The kind where she commits fraud while I document everything. The kind that will end her career and send her to prison. Isabella's smile turned predatory. She destroyed you once. Now we're going to return the favor. Publicly. Permanently. Completely. For the first time in 10 years, Silas Reeves felt something other than despair. He felt hope. And rage. And the absolute certainty that Vanessa Whitmore was about to pay for every dollar she'd stolen, every lie she'd told, every artist she'd destroyed. Starting now. 3 days later, Isabella Chen walked back into the Whitmore Gallery carrying a leather portfolio and an expression of calculated interest. Vanessa practically materialized from her office, desperation masked behind professional courtesy. Ms. Chen, I'm so glad you returned. About the other day, I want to apologize for any misunderstanding. Forget it, Isabella said, settling into a chair near Vanessa's desk. I'm here about something else entirely. I've been thinking about outsider art. Street artists, homeless creators, people working outside traditional gallery systems. There's a growing market for authentic work from marginalized voices. Vanessa's expression shifted from apprehensive to intrigued. I wasn't aware you collected in that category. Most people aren't. I keep those acquisitions quiet because once word spreads that I'm interested, prices inflate overnight. Isabella opened her portfolio, showed Vanessa photographs of paintings. Last year I paid $35,000 for a piece by a homeless veteran in Los Angeles. It just appraised at $90,000. The key is finding raw talent before anyone else recognizes its value. That's a significant return, Vanessa said carefully. The trick is acquisition. Homeless artists usually have inflated ideas about their work's worth, or they're too disorganized to negotiate properly. That's where dealers come in, people who can locate these artists, acquire their work efficiently, and connect them with collectors like me. Isabella leaned back. I pay finder's fees. 20% of purchase price for anyone who brings me quality outsider art. Vanessa's mind was clearly calculating. 20% of significant sales for simply connecting Isabella with vulnerable artists who didn't understand market dynamics. Comment where you're watching from if you can see what's about to happen. That homeless man who was here, the one you were interested in, have you had contact with him since? Vanessa asked. No. I lost track of him after we left. Homeless individuals are difficult to locate, they move around, avoid institutions, don't leave digital footprints. Isabella sighed with feigned frustration. Which is unfortunate because his work had genuine potential. If someone could track him down and acquire his complete portfolio, I'd pay well for it. How well? Depends on volume and quality. Maybe $50,000 to $70,000 total. Your finder's fee would be $10,000 to $14,000 for a few hours of work tracking him down and negotiating purchase. Isabella pulled out her phone. Of course, you need to acquire the work first. I can't deal directly with someone that unstable, too much legal liability. But if an established gallery acquired his work properly, I'd purchase from you as a clean transaction. Vanessa nodded slowly. I may be able to locate him. Homeless individuals have patterns, shelters they frequent, areas where they spend time. Someone as distinctive as he was wouldn't be impossible to find. Perfect. But Vanessa, discretion is essential. If word gets out that I'm interested, other collectors will start looking, and prices will inflate. Handle this quietly. Offer him a few $1,000s, that's generous for someone living on the streets. Get his entire portfolio for as little as possible, then resell to me at market rates. We both profit, and he gets more money than he'd ever see otherwise. What if he refuses to sell? Then you explain reality to him. No other gallery will touch his work. No legitimate collector will deal with a homeless artist directly. You're his only option for getting any money at all. Either he takes your offer, or his paintings stay in whatever storage unit or shelter he's keeping them in until they rot. Isabella's voice carried cold pragmatism. Desperate people accept whatever deal is in front of them. Vanessa smiled. Not the professional gallery owner smile. The predator smile. I'll begin inquiries today. How quickly do you need results? 2 weeks. I'm leaving for Hong Kong at the end of the month. If you can acquire his work before then, we'll close the deal immediately. Cash transaction. Isabella stood, adjusted her coat. And Vanessa, make sure he signs a proper contract. I need clean documentation showing you legally acquired the work and hold all rights. No complications later if he decides he was underpaid. Of course. I'll have my lawyer draft something comprehensive. After Isabella left, Vanessa spent exactly 12 minutes celebrating her luck before calling the private investigator she kept on retainer for background checks. I need you to locate a homeless man, probably staying at shelters in the Dorchester or Roxbury area. White male, late 40s, graying hair, probably has paint stains on his clothes. Goes by Silas or possibly Silas Reeves. Find him fast. There's a time-sensitive business opportunity. The investigator called back 6 hours later. Found him. Silas Reeves, age 48, staying at St. Christopher's Shelter in Dorchester most nights. Has a storage unit at Secure Space on Dorchester Avenue. Keeps regular hours at the Boston Public Library during the day, usually at the Copley Square branch, working at the tables near the art section. Excellent. Send me everything you have on him. The next morning, Vanessa found Silas at the library, sitting at a table sketching in a worn notebook. She approached with the sympathetic expression she'd perfected over years of dealing with vulnerable artists. Mr. Reeves? I'm Vanessa Whitmore. We met briefly at my gallery last week. I wanted to apologize for my initial reaction to your work. I was having a difficult day and didn't give your painting the attention it deserved. Silas looked up, his expression wary. You called it derivative tourist trash. I was wrong. I've had time to reflect, and I realize your work has genuine merit. Which is why I'm here. Vanessa sat down across from him. I'd like to purchase your complete portfolio. Every painting you have. I'm prepared to offer $5,000, cash, immediate payment, no complicated contracts or delays. $5,000 for 18 paintings. Silas said slowly. I know it seems low compared to gallery prices, but you need to understand market reality. You have no representation, no exhibition history in the past decade, no authentication or provenance documentation. Most galleries wouldn't consider your work at all. I'm offering legitimate money for art that currently has no market value. Vanessa pulled out a contract she'd had her lawyer draft. $5,000, paid today, for full ownership and all rights to your existing work. This is more money than you'll see any other way. Silas stared at the contract. His hands trembled slightly. Can I think about it? You have 24 hours. After that, my offer expires. I have other artists I'm considering, and I can't wait indefinitely for someone who doesn't recognize a generous opportunity. Vanessa stood. St. Christopher's Shelter, correct? I'll return tomorrow at this time for your answer. She walked away feeling the particular satisfaction that came from exploiting vulnerability for profit. $5,000 for paintings she'd resell to Isabella Chen for $60,000 or $70,000. Maybe more if she negotiated properly. What Vanessa didn't know was that Silas Reeves was wearing a recording device provided by Isabella Chen's security team. Every word of their conversation had been captured in crystal clear audio. And Isabella Chen was currently sitting 2 tables away, dressed in casual clothes with a baseball cap hiding her distinctive silver-streaked hair, reading a newspaper while a hidden camera in her purse recorded everything. The trap had been set. Vanessa had walked into it perfectly. And tomorrow, when Silas signed that exploitative contract, Vanessa Whitmore would create the evidence that would destroy her career forever. Silas met Vanessa the next afternoon at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the library, neutral territory she'd suggested to make him feel comfortable. He arrived wearing the same worn jacket and jeans, playing his role perfectly. Vanessa sat at a corner table with the contract, a cashier's check, and an expression of practiced sympathy. Have you made your decision? Vanessa asked as Silas slid into the seat across from her. I'll take your offer, Silas said quietly. $5,000 for all 18 paintings. When do I get paid? As soon as you sign. Vanessa pushed the contract across the table. My lawyer drafted this to protect both of us. Standard acquisition agreement. You're selling me full ownership and all reproduction rights to the 18 paintings currently stored at Secure Space facility on Dorchester Avenue. I'm paying you $5,000. Clean, simple, no complications. Silas picked up the contract, read slowly. The language was deliberately complex, legal terminology designed to confuse someone who wasn't familiar with art world contracts. Buried in Section 7 was the critical clause: seller waives all future claims to artwork value, authentication disputes, or profit participation from subsequent sales. Translation: once Vanessa owned the paintings, Silas couldn't claim he'd been underpaid even when she resold them for massive profits. "Why do you need rights to future sales?" Silas asked, pointing to the clause. "If you're buying them, they're yours." Legal protection. Sometimes artists claim they were coerced or didn't understand what they were signing. This clause prevents that kind of dispute. Vanessa smiled reassuringly. It's standard in acquisitions from individuals without gallery representation. Protects both parties. Silas hesitated convincingly. What if the paintings turn out to be worth more than $5,000? Then I take that risk, not you. That's how business works. I'm gambling that I can resell your work for profit. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But you get guaranteed money today instead of maybe money later. Vanessa tapped the cashier's check. $5,000. More than most homeless individuals see in a year. Enough to get you into housing, off the streets, start rebuilding your life. Comment where you're watching from if you've ever been manipulated like this. Silas picked up the pen. His hand shook, not from nervousness about the trap, but from genuine rage at hearing Vanessa use the exact same exploitation tactics she'd used 10 years ago. The same false sympathy. The same manufactured urgency. The same predatory patience of someone who knew desperate people would accept anything. He signed. 3 pages, initialed in margins, signature on the final page making the transfer legal and binding. Vanessa countersigned, slid the cashier's check across the table. "Congratulations, Mr. Reeves. You just made a smart business decision. When do you want the paintings?" "Today. I have a truck waiting 2 blocks away. We'll go to your storage unit now, load everything, and you'll walk away with your money." Simple and efficient. Vanessa stood, gathering the contract. "I assume you have the only key to the unit." "I have the only key." They walked to secure space in silence. Vanessa's truck, actually a rental van she'd hired for the afternoon, waited in the parking lot. Inside the storage unit, Silas helped her load all 18 paintings, each one wrapped in protective plastic, into the van. Vanessa handled them carefully, already calculating resale values. The Boston Common painting alone would get her $50,000 from Isabella. The complete collection, maybe $80,000 or $90,000 if she negotiated well. After the $5,000 she'd just paid Silas, she'd profit $85,000 for a few days of work tracking down a homeless artist. "Pleasure doing business with you," Vanessa said once the van was loaded. She drove away feeling the particular satisfaction of a predator who'd successfully hunted vulnerable prey. What she didn't see was Isabella Chen's Mercedes parked 3 rows away, with cameras recording every moment of the transaction. What she didn't hear was the audio equipment capturing her every word about protecting herself from artist disputes and guaranteeing he can't claim underpayment later. And what she definitely didn't know was that in exactly 9 days, the Boston Museum of Contemporary Art would send press releases to every major art publication in North America announcing a major retrospective exhibition, Silas Reeves, 10 Years of Invisibility. Isabella called Silas 15 minutes after Vanessa drove away. Perfect performance. She took the bait completely. She used the exact same contract language she used 10 years ago, Silas said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Word for word. Waives all future claims to artwork value. That's how she stole from me before. Got me to sign away rights while I was grieving. Which means this is her pattern, not a one-time mistake. Pattern proves intent. Intent proves fraud. Isabella's voice carried cold satisfaction. I'm filing the exhibition announcement tomorrow. Every major collector, gallery owner, and art critic in the country will know Silas Reeves is alive and being celebrated by the Museum of Contemporary Art. They'll see preview images of your work. And when Vanessa sees the announcement, she'll panic. She'll realize the homeless artist she just exploited for $5,000 is actually Silas Reeves creating museum-quality work worth hundreds of thousands. She'll understand that she just committed fraud on camera while trying to resell your paintings to me. Isabella paused. Then she'll have a choice: come forward and admit what she did, or try to hide it and make everything worse. What do you think she'll do? Try to hide it. People like Vanessa always think they're smarter than everyone else. She'll try to cover her tracks, maybe even approach me to complete the sale before the exhibition reveals everything. Isabella's laugh was cold. Which will give us even more evidence of intentional fraud. When does the exhibition open? 3 weeks. November 15th. We'll have your 18 paintings displayed alongside documentation showing exactly what Vanessa paid for them and when. We'll have the contract she made you sign. We'll have audio and video of her deliberately exploiting a vulnerable artist. Isabella's voice hardened. And we'll have testimony from other artists she's done this to. My investigator has already found 3 others willing to come forward once they know they're not alone. Silas closed his eyes, thinking about Elena. About 10 years of invisibility. About every night sleeping in shelters while Vanessa slept in comfort bought with stolen money. Will she go to prison? If the district attorney pursues criminal charges, yes. Fraud, theft, exploitation of vulnerable individuals. She's looking at significant prison time if convicted. Isabella paused. But even if she avoids criminal charges, her career is over. No gallery will work with her. No artist will trust her. No collector will buy from her. She'll be professionally destroyed just like she destroyed you. Good, Silas said simply. Get some rest. You have an exhibition to prepare for. And Silas, Isabella's voice softened slightly. Your work deserves to be seen. Elena would be proud of what you've survived. What you've created despite everything. After hanging up, Silas walked to the apartment Isabella's advance payment had rented for him. A studio in Alston, nothing fancy, but clean and warm and his. A place where he could sleep without fear of theft or violence or being told to move along. He set up his easel near the window. Started a new painting. Not of homelessness this time. Of resurrection. Of justice delayed but finally arriving. Of talent that survived 10 years of invisibility and emerged stronger. Vanessa Whitmore thought she'd just made a smart business deal. She was about to learn that some people you destroy have the courage to rise again. And when they do, they bring witnesses. The email hit 500 inboxes simultaneously at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: Major Exhibition Announcement, Silas Reeves Retrospective at Boston MCA. Vanessa Whitmore was drinking her second espresso when her phone started buzzing with notifications. 3 texts from fellow gallery owners. 2 calls from collectors. An email marked urgent from her assistant. All asking the same question: did you know Silas Reeves was alive? She opened the Museum of Contemporary Art's press release with hands that had started trembling before she finished the first paragraph. Boston Museum of Contemporary Art proudly announces Silas Reeves, 10 Years of Invisibility, a major retrospective exhibition featuring 18 never-before-seen paintings created during the acclaimed artist's decade away from the public eye. The exhibition, curated by renowned collector Isabella Chen, opens November 15th and runs through January 2026. The preview image showed the Boston Common painting. The one currently sitting in Vanessa's gallery storage room. The one she'd purchased from a homeless man 6 days ago for $5,000. Vanessa's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Brown liquid spread across expensive white oak, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on her computer screen, reading and rereading words that were destroying her world in real time. Reeves disappeared from the art world in 2015 following personal tragedy, spending the subsequent decade homeless while continuing to create powerful documentary work about American poverty and survival. These 18 paintings, completed between 2019 and 2024, represent some of the most important social realism produced in contemporary American art. The press release included quotes from Isabella Chen: "Silas Reeves never stopped being a major artist. He simply became invisible to an art world that judges talent by social status rather than merit." These paintings are museum-quality masterworks that document a decade of American life from the perspective of those society prefers to ignore. Vanessa's phone rang. A collector she'd been courting for 8 months. She answered automatically. "Vanessa, I just saw the MCA announcement. Silas Reeves, wasn't he your client back in the day? Before he disappeared?" The collector's voice carried excited interest. "Do you have any of his early work in inventory? Because if this exhibition is as important as Isabella Chen claims, his market value is about to explode." I'll have to check my records," Vanessa managed. "Check fast. If you have anything, I want first option before the exhibition opens and prices go crazy." The collector hung up. 3 more calls came in the next 20 minutes. All asking about Silas Reeves. All wanting to acquire his work before the retrospective created a buying frenzy. None of them knowing that the gallery owner they were calling had just exploited that artist for $5,000 6 days earlier. Vanessa pulled out the contract Silas had signed. Read it again, looking for protection, finding only evidence of fraud. She documented everything: the low purchase price, the rights waiver, the deliberate exploitation of a vulnerable individual. She'd created a paper trail proving she'd knowingly underpaid a major artist whose work was about to be celebrated by one of Boston's most prestigious institutions. And Isabella Chen knew. Had to know. The timing was too perfect. Vanessa purchases the paintings on Thursday, the museum announces a retrospective the following Tuesday. Isabella had set her up. Had played her like she'd played countless vulnerable artists. Comment where you're watching from if you love watching karma work. Vanessa called Isabella's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She tried again an hour later. Same result. By the 3rd attempt, she understood, Isabella was screening her calls deliberately. Making her wait. Making her panic. That evening, Vanessa drove to her storage room where the 18 paintings sat wrapped in plastic. She unwrapped the Boston Common piece, studied it under proper lighting. The technical mastery was undeniable now that she was actually looking. The layering, the color harmonies, the compositional precision, this was museum-quality work. Worth tens of thousands at minimum. Maybe more after the exhibition. And she'd paid $5,000 for all 18. Her lawyer called at 7 p.m., returning her frantic message from that afternoon. "Talk to me about this Silas Reeves situation," he said without preamble. Vanessa explained everything, finding Silas at the library, offering $5,000 for 18 paintings, getting him to sign a contract waiving future claims, taking possession 6 days ago. "And now the Museum of Contemporary Art is doing a major retrospective on him?" her lawyer asked. "Opening in 3 weeks. Curated by Isabella Chen." Silence on the line. "Then, Vanessa, that contract you had him sign is legally problematic if he was the homeless artist you described. Courts don't look kindly on contracts that grossly undervalue assets when signed by vulnerable individuals experiencing housing instability. It looks like exploitation." "But he signed willingly. Did he have legal representation? Did you provide documentation showing the painting's potential value? Did you disclose that you planned to resell them for significant profit?" Her lawyer's voice was grim. Because if the answer to any of those questions is no, and if Isabella Chen decides to challenge the transaction, you're exposed to fraud charges. "She set me up," Vanessa said, the reality finally crystallizing. "She told me she wanted to buy outsider art. She encouraged me to acquire his work cheaply. She knew who he was the entire time. That doesn't matter. She didn't commit fraud, you did. You're the one who deliberately underpaid a vulnerable artist and had him waive rights to future value. Her lawyer paused. My advice, reach out to Reeves immediately. Offer to renegotiate the contract. Pay him fair market value for the paintings. Document everything. If this goes public without you taking corrective action, you're facing civil suits at minimum, possibly criminal fraud charges. Vanessa hung up and tried Silas's number, the one he'd provided during their transaction. It was disconnected. She called the shelter where she tracked him down. They said no one by that name was currently staying there. He'd vanished. Just like he'd vanished 10 years ago. Except this time, he'd vanished with Isabella Chen's protection and a museum retrospective about to make him famous again. Vanessa spent that night searching online for any way to contact Silas Reeves or Isabella Chen. She found nothing. Both had disappeared behind walls of lawyers and publicists and carefully managed privacy. At 2 a.m., sitting alone in her gallery surrounded by art she'd acquired through legitimate channels and questionable ones, Vanessa finally understood the trap she'd walked into. Isabella Chen hadn't just bought Silas's paintings. She'd documented Vanessa committing the same fraud she'd committed 10 years ago. Had recorded her deliberately exploiting a vulnerable artist. Had evidence that would destroy Vanessa's career and potentially send her to prison. And the exhibition opening in 3 weeks would reveal everything. Vanessa had 3 options: come forward and admit the fraud before the exhibition, try to hide it and hope nobody discovered the transaction, or flee Boston entirely and abandon the gallery she'd built over a decade. All 3 options ended with her career destroyed. She'd been outmaneuvered completely. By a homeless artist she'd dismissed as worthless. And by a collector who'd pretended to be as predatory as Vanessa herself. The letter arrived at the Whitmore Gallery by courier on Monday morning, 1 week before the exhibition opening. Heavy cream stationery with the law firm's letterhead embossed in black, Morrison, Chen and Associates. Vanessa opened it with shaking hands. Dear Ms. Whitmore, our client, Mr. Silas Reeves, has authorized us to inform you that he is aware of the transaction dated October 17, 2024, wherein you purchased 18 paintings for $5,000. Mr. Reeves is prepared to repurchase said paintings at fair market value of $950,000, representing the legitimate worth of museum-quality contemporary art. Alternatively, you may return the paintings and accept a full refund of your $5,000 purchase price. You have 48 hours to respond before this matter becomes public. Regards, Catherine Morrison, Attorney at Law. $950,000. The number Vanessa would need to pay to own paintings she'd already bought for $5,000. Except she didn't have $950,000. Her gallery's entire operating budget for the year was $400,000. The letter included a phone number. Vanessa called it immediately. A woman answered. Morrison Law Offices. This is Vanessa Whitmore. I received a letter regarding Silas Reeves. I need to speak with someone immediately. Ms. Morrison is expecting your call. One moment. Catherine Morrison's voice was professional and cold. Ms. Whitmore. Have you made a decision regarding the paintings? I can't pay $950,000. That's an impossible amount. Then return the paintings and accept your refund. Mr. Reeves is willing to void the transaction entirely. But I paid fair market value. You paid $5,000 for work worth nearly $1 million. That's not fair market value. That's exploitation of a vulnerable individual experiencing homelessness. Catherine's tone hardened. We have documentation of the entire transaction. Audio recordings of you telling Mr. Reeves that no legitimate collector would deal with a homeless artist directly and that your offer was more money than he'd see any other way. We have video of you making him sign a contract waiving rights to future value specifically so he couldn't claim underpayment later. Vanessa's blood went cold. You recorded me. Mr. Reeves wore a recording device. With his consent. Perfectly legal in Massachusetts, which is a one-party consent state for recordings. Everything you said is documented. Catherine paused. Here's what happens if you refuse to return the paintings. The Museum of Contemporary Art exhibition opens in 6 days. The gallery documentation will show that you acquired these 18 paintings for $5,000 1 week before a major retrospective. Every art critic, collector, and journalist in attendance will understand what that means. Your reputation will be destroyed. Isabella Chen set me up. Ms. Chen encouraged you to acquire outsider art at market rates. She never told you to exploit anyone. You made the choice to offer $5,000 for work you knew was worth significantly more. You made the choice to use a contract designed to prevent the artist from claiming fair compensation later. Catherine's voice carried no sympathy. Those were your decisions. Own them. Comment where you're watching from if she deserves everything coming to her. What if I go public first? Tell people that Reeves and Chen entrapped me? You'd be admitting to fraud while trying to claim you're the victim. Good luck with that strategy. Catherine let that sink in. You have 48 hours, Ms. Whitmore. Return the paintings or the documentation goes public. The line went dead. Vanessa sat in her gallery office surrounded by success built on theft and fraud and exploitation. Every painting on her walls, every sculpture on display, she'd acquired most legitimately. But the foundation of her gallery, the money that had let her open in the first place, had come from stealing from Silas Reeves 10 years ago. And now he was back. With proof. With witnesses. With power. That evening, Marcus Thornton walked into the Whitmore Gallery unannounced. The district attorney of Suffolk County, a man Vanessa had cultivated carefully over 3 years, who'd purchased 2 paintings from her for his office. "We need to talk," Thornton said, his expression grim. "Marcus, what a surprise." "Don't. I got a call today from Isabella Chen's legal team. They briefed me on an ongoing fraud investigation involving your gallery and an artist named Silas Reeves." Thornton pulled out a folder. "They sent me this documentation. Want to explain why you purchased paintings for $5,000 from a homeless artist 1 week before a museum retrospective on his work?" "I didn't know who he was." "You knew exactly who he was. Your investigator's report is part of the documentation. You hired someone to track down Silas Reeves, probably homeless, probably staying at shelters. You knew his name. You found him deliberately." Thornton opened the folder. "And this gets worse. The legal team also sent me documentation from transactions 10 years ago. 30 paintings you allegedly sold on behalf of Silas Reeves during his wife's cancer treatment. Paintings you claimed sold for $400,000 but actually sold for $2 million. Vanessa felt her world collapsing. That was a misunderstanding. That was fraud. Systematic, calculated fraud against a grieving man whose wife was dying. Thornton's voice hardened. "One of those paintings is hanging in my office. I paid you $150,000 for it 3 years ago. If that painting was obtained through fraud, I'm a victim of your crimes too. Marcus, please. I'm here as a courtesy before this becomes official. The Attorney General's office is opening an investigation based on Isabella Chen's documentation. They're looking at fraud, embezzlement, exploitation of vulnerable individuals. You're looking at serious criminal charges if even half of this is proven." Thornton closed the folder. "My advice as someone who considered you a friend, get a criminal defense attorney. Return those paintings immediately. And prepare for your gallery to be shut down pending investigation." He walked out, leaving Vanessa alone with the reality that had finally caught up to her. At 11 p.m., she called Catherine Morrison's number. "I'll return the paintings. All 18. Tomorrow morning. Just tell me where." "The Museum of Contemporary Art. 10 a.m. Mr. Reeves will be there with witnesses. Bring the paintings and the signed contract. You'll receive your $5,000 refund and sign documents voiding the transaction entirely." "Will this stop the criminal investigation?" "That's not my decision. That's up to the district attorney. Catherine paused. But returning the paintings is your only chance of avoiding additional charges. Refusing would make everything worse. Vanessa hung up. Spent the night packing 18 paintings she'd thought would make her $85,000 profit. Instead, they were going to cost her everything she'd built over a decade. At 9:30 the next morning, she loaded the paintings into her van and drove to the Museum of Contemporary Art. Silas Reeves waited at the loading dock with Isabella Chen, Catherine Morrison, 2 museum officials, and a photographer documenting everything. "Thank you for returning my work," Silas said quietly as Vanessa unloaded the paintings. She said nothing. Just accepted her cashier's check for $5,000, signed documents voiding the transaction, and watched 18 paintings disappear into the museum. As she drove away, Vanessa understood that returning the paintings wouldn't save her career. The Attorney General's investigation would expose the fraud from 10 years ago. The art world would learn she'd built her gallery on stolen money. Everything was ending. And the man she tried to erase had erased her instead. The Museum of Contemporary Art's main gallery filled with 300 invited guests on opening night, critics, collectors, journalists, fellow artists, and people who'd known Silas Reeves before his disappearance. Champagne flowed from tables near the entrance while white-gloved servers offered canapés to people dressed in $1,000 outfits discussing art and money and reputation. Silas stood in a side room wearing a tailored suit Isabella had insisted on buying, watching through a doorway as strangers examined his decade of invisibility rendered visible on pristine walls. Each painting hung under perfect lighting with brass plaques listing title, date, materials. Boston Common Dawn, 2024. Oil on canvas. Shelter interior, winter 2023. Oil on canvas. Veterans Memorial, November 2022. Oil on canvas. His hands trembled slightly. Not from nervousness. From the surreal experience of being seen again after 10 years of erasure. Ready? Isabella appeared beside him, elegant in black with silver jewelry that probably cost more than his first car. "They're waiting for you." "I don't know what to say." "Say what matters. Tell them what it means to be invisible while creating visible work." Isabella squeezed his shoulder. "You've earned this moment. Don't waste it being humble." They walked into the gallery together. Conversation quieted as people recognized Silas, some from old photographs, others from instinct, all understanding they were seeing a ghost made flesh. The artist who disappeared into homelessness and emerged with testimony rendered in paint. Isabella took the microphone first. 10 years ago, the art world lost Silas Reeves. We assumed tragedy had silenced a major talent. We were wrong. Tragedy didn't silence him, it revealed what his talent actually was. The ability to witness suffering and transform it into beauty without diminishing either the suffering or the beauty. Comment where you're watching from if art like this matters. She gestured to the paintings surrounding them. These 18 works were created in shelters, parks, and storage units by an artist experiencing homelessness while galleries sold mediocre work for hundreds of thousands of dollars. They represent some of the most important social documentary painting produced in 21st century America. Museum quality. Historically significant. Morally essential. Isabella handed the microphone to Silas. 300 faces turned toward him. Critics whose reviews could make or destroy careers. Collectors whose purchases could mean financial security. Journalists whose articles would shape his narrative. "My name is Silas Reeves," he began, his voice stronger than he'd expected. 10 years ago, I disappeared. Not by choice. By circumstance, by grief, by a system that made me invisible because I was poor. I spent a decade sleeping in shelters while creating work nobody with power would ever see because homelessness disqualified me from consideration before anyone looked at what I'd made. He walked to the nearest painting, the Boston Common piece that had started everything. "This is where I slept most nights. Under these trees. On these benches. With these people, we weren't statistics or social problems. We were human beings surviving circumstances that broke us but didn't destroy us completely. For 10 years, I painted us, documented us, gave us the dignity that society refused. I used techniques I learned at prestigious art schools and applied them to subjects prestigious galleries wouldn't display. Because the art world has rules, and the first rule is that poverty makes you worthless. Silas turned to face the crowd. But someone broke that rule. Isabella Chen saw my work without seeing my poverty first. She recognized talent before she recognized circumstance. And she gave me something more valuable than money, she gave me visibility. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. There's something else this exhibition represents. Justice. 10 years ago, I was destroyed by someone who exploited my grief for profit. Who stole from me while my wife was dying. Who erased my reputation when I tried to hold her accountable. The gallery fell completely silent. That person's name is Vanessa Whitmore. She was my dealer, my business manager, my representative. When I needed money for cancer treatment, she sold my work for $2 million and paid me $400,000. When I discovered the theft, she destroyed my career with rumors that I was mentally unstable. She used my stolen money to open her gallery and build a reputation while I became homeless. Silas's voice hardened. 3 weeks ago, she tried to do it again. Found me at a library, offered me $5,000 for these 18 paintings, made me sign a contract waiving rights to future value. She thought she'd found another vulnerable artist to exploit. What she actually found was a trap. He gestured to Isabella. Ms. Chen documented everything. Every word of Vanessa's exploitation. Every clause in her predatory contract. Every moment of her deliberately underpaying an artist she knew was worth significantly more. The Massachusetts Attorney General is now investigating 10 years of fraud. The district attorney is reviewing criminal charges. And the art world finally knows who Vanessa Whitmore really is. Several people in the audience nodded. Others whispered. A few pulled out phones to look up news about the investigation that had broken 2 days earlier. I'm telling you this not for revenge, though I won't pretend revenge doesn't feel good. I'm telling you because Vanessa Whitmore isn't unique. The art world is full of people who exploit vulnerable artists. Who profit from desperation. Who use contracts and legal language and power imbalances to steal from people who just want to create. Silas looked around the gallery at paintings that represented 10 years of survival. If this exhibition does anything beyond celebrate my return, I hope it makes the art world examine how it treats artists who don't have power. How it values work based on the artist's social status rather than the work's merit. How it creates systems that make people invisible and then profits from their invisibility. He set down the microphone. The applause started small, a few people, then dozens, then everyone. Standing ovation that lasted 2 minutes. For the next 3 hours, Silas moved through the crowd answering questions, accepting congratulations, reconnecting with old colleagues who thought he was dead. 14 of the 18 paintings sold by the end of the night. Total value, $1.3 million. At 11 p.m., after the crowd dispersed, Silas stood alone in the gallery looking at the 4 remaining paintings. Isabella joined him, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. To survival, she said, handing him a glass. To visibility, Silas countered. They drank in comfortable silence. What happens now? Silas asked. Now you live. Create new work. Rebuild your career on your own terms. Use your platform to advocate for other artists the system has made invisible. Isabella smiled. And watch Vanessa Whitmore face consequences for a decade of fraud. Is that justice or revenge? Both. And she earned it. Isabella set down her glass. The Attorney General charged her this morning. 19 counts of fraud, embezzlement, exploitation of vulnerable individuals. She's looking at 15 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Silas felt something he hadn't experienced in 10 years. Not happiness exactly. More like completion. The story that had broken him finally had an ending that included justice. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for keeping Elena's memory alive by never stopping. By creating when creation seemed pointless. By surviving when survival seemed impossible." Isabella squeezed his hand. "You didn't just paint homelessness, Silas. You painted resurrection. And that's what makes this work important." They left the museum together, walking into Boston night that felt different than it had for a decade. Silas had an apartment to go home to. Money in the bank. A career restored. A future. 6 months later, 3 young artists knocked on Silas's studio door. They'd been homeless, creating work in margins, unable to get galleries to look at them seriously. "We saw your exhibition," one said. "We wondered if you could help us get seen." Silas looked at their portfolios. Raw talent. Authentic voices. The kind of work the art world would dismiss because the artists were poor. "I know a collector," Silas said, pulling out his phone. "She specializes in finding talent the art world overlooks." He called Isabella Chen. Because visibility, once earned, was meant to be shared. Subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to be seen.